IVM.
Hey, welcome to Shunya 1, episode 47. Today we are talking to Vivek Lath, who is going to tell us about a bunch of stuff about building content, broadcasting, and a whole bunch of cool investments that he's done. And of course, we had a very interesting episode last week with Jugal, who we spoke to about some very cool things. I hope you guys have checked in on Slack and given us some feedback there. Onwards with today's show. So today we have with us Vivek Lath.
Yes, that's right.
Welcome
that's
to the show.
Right.
Did I say your name right?
Perfectly fine. And you put that heavy stress on the T. That's the right way.
Wow. So imagine, I meet very few people who have complicated names like myself. So you actually have one which is very short and yet complicated to pronounce.
Commonly, people call me Lath. So, I have those jokes from my childhood where Lath marunga tujhe.
Welcome to the club. I have a lot of Sheila Ki Jawani jokes. So, I feel you. But Vivek, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You are, of course, the founder and managing director of GoQuest Media Ventures.
Right.
And you've also been an angel investor in a bunch of cool new startups, which I want to talk about. But just to give us a little background, why don't you tell us your story so far?
Sure. So, I go back to, straight away to the first job I had, because my life is very interesting, the kinds of transitions I've done in my profession. So I studied to be a computer science engineer, coder by hobby.
Okay.
And was decently good back then. But somehow got convinced by a good friend of mine to go beyond technology and explore, investment banking and consulting jobs. Because back in 2002, that was the cool thing to do. Right? The glamour and everything attached to it was very different.
Pre-crisis.
Yeah.
All Ferrari drivers.
Yes. And, one trip to New York, and that's where boss yahi karne ka hai abhi to. Abhi to isi ke andar life hai.
Right.
So right after computer science school back in USC, I get hired by a boutique called Cannondale Associates, which was essentially just doing consulting work, management consulting work for FMCG and retail companies.
Nice.
So that was really the first job and the first stint in the management side that I had. Did that for about 2.5 years, got back to India, joined Tata Sky. And the profile at Tata Sky was largely related to launching new businesses using new interesting content. So pay-per-view showcase was the first piece that I was given charge of. So decide what the price point should be, to decide what the content should be on it.
This is back in 2004.
2008.
2008.
Actually, 7 March is when I joined them.
Okay.
And that showcase platform was launched, 3 or 4 months before that. So that's what I took over and, started looking at content planning, started looking at broadcast industry as a whole and see what's happening. That's my first stint with entertainment. Then again, the entrepreneurial bug cut. So I left. I said I have to start something interesting in the retail area because I understand that very closely. बहुत ज्ञान दिया है सबको. And so I started something called as Intellects Marketing, which was printing coupons at the point of sale. So along with the bill printer, depending on what you've purchased at that time or your purchase history, it would print out targeted coupons.
Wow.
I piloted that in Hypercity in Millard for 5 months. Did very well. However, bad timing, 2009, and my co-founder also decided to go back to his job. He was largely running technology at that time. So just decided to take a break and said, chalo isko band karte hain, figure out something else. And accidentally met this gentleman who was starting a movie company called Synergy Pictures with a gentleman by the name Madhu Mantena, who I didn't know at that time. Now everyone knows.
Okay.
And they told me, do you want to run distribution? I had no idea what film distribution meant at that time, to be very honest. I said, chalo, try karte. It was actually a stopgap thing. I didn't think that I would stay in that job for more than a year, but ended up liking it, understood the whole entertainment industry, very close quarters from, movies, television shows, how they work, what's the economics, how they function, how to make money. 2013, I started out on my own. Started GoQuest Media. The genesis was really to create an online marketplace. So,
wow, okay. So you're a techie at heart. You're
I'm
always thinking products.
Absolutely thinking products. I'm a techie at heart completely. I think everything from that point of view. Right. So built the whole thing up, but very soon realized as I was talking to customers and content sellers that this won't work too far for various reasons. with the nature of the business, how platforms work and all that. But soon realized that we were doing very good in simply acting as a buyer and seller and trading off that content.
Interesting.
And so that business outside of the platform started getting built up. And then that's it. Continued to do that, saw good monies there and built up a team and then launched a couple more businesses within the media domain at the same time.
Amazing.
And that's what GoQuest Media is from last 5 years. We are now the number one independent distributor of content from India. Do about 10,000 hours of content across the world.
Across the world.
Across the world.
See, it's a whole new dimension of when you think about it, of how content flows. I know, of course, content has become so available to us, across platforms today. We don't think so much about, where's the money in all of this. We think we just pay for a subscription and then you hit play. But before we get into that, I wanted to talk about one more interesting thing which you just mentioned, right? The stuff you were doing at Intellytics is actually very interesting, and a lot maybe before your time in terms of all the other solutions we've seen out there.
Correct.
Right? What actually made you do that? Like, was that your first foray into, I would say, retail tech and so on? And is there still any languishing version of that?
I mean, the version, I still have the tech lying with me. And to be quite honestly, I'm willing to give it for free to anyone who thinks they can use it.
Because a bunch of startups have tried after this.
Essentially, because I know I'm never going to touch it back again. I know there were a bunch of retail companies who were interested. I just told them, I don't have the bandwidth to do it anymore. My time goes somewhere else, and that opportunity is very different. But back in 2009 when I launched it, it was very interesting.
It's fascinating, yeah.
And I had a lot of FMCG companies were really, really interested. I still remember when I shut it down, one of the calls I made to this, this lady who used to handle modern trade in this region, and she was visibly angry. Like, when is a time when your client is angry because you shut your service?
Yeah.
However, it was a time when I'd lost a lot of money of my own. There were no investors ready, so I had to sort of close it down at that point. But yes, it was a little early for its time.
Yeah.
But if I look back 5 years ahead or 7 years ahead,
there have been versions of it.
There could be versions of it.
Yeah.
And of course, e-commerce took over big time. And modern trade still, I don't think, has grown beyond single-digit percentages in India. But it's still large enough for something like this to function.
In fact, this week I think, the UPI guys just launched something just this week around how they'll be able to print a QR code on POS, point of sale receipts, just after the printout, so that you can just pay with that QR code.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
that really is. I had no idea. Sorry.
Yeah, apparently all point of sale systems have to mandatory upgrade to that or something.
But
that's not so awesome. Making it mandatory for people is a different thing.
Okay, maybe I'm not. Maybe I don't think it's mandatory, but it's something which, if they want to be UPI enabled, they have to use that. Yeah.
Okay.
Point of sale is actually a continuous innovation that keeps going. I remember back in the day, there were so many things happening at that time. And retailers were trying to figure out, what do we implement, what do we not implement, what is it that will help us get product off the shelf. That was really what they were looking at.
Right. That's what they still look at.
That was still look at. But it was a very interesting model. I sold a whole bunch of coupons from 5 rupees a print to 1 rupee a print for an average coupon printing cost of about 5 paisa. So
wow,
good money to be made from Gold's Gym to Kaya Skin Clinic to Anjali Mukherjee to Britannia. Marico was the biggest client.
You're basically a free charge before free charge existed, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah, don't make me feel bad. I see 400 million now.
Well, but since then, of course, you have GoQuest and you have your bunch of very cool investments which you've made. Right. Before we get into GoQuest, what made you turn into an angel investor? So how did that transition happen?
The passion was always there. Essentially it all started from my own first entrepreneurial days 10 years back.
Right.
And seeing those entrepreneurs, working with them, or rather interacting with them, was very interesting. So the idea was always there that, at some point when I make money, I want to go back and start investing back into interesting startups that, essentially when I couldn't get money, is there a way for me to give back when I end up making a little bit more money? And also because in those early days, I was so glued into the startup ecosystem of 2009, 2008, and then starting something of my own, you knew that, I would be able to do a decent job in investing. Of course, that was a misconception in hindsight, but that's what everyone starts with. Ke main born do. And you soon realize that nahi boss. So that's how it started. And at one point, I made a decision. Come on, let me start looking at companies and figuring out where I invest, what I invest in.
Right.
And it's largely passion. There was no.
So could you talk about a few of them?
So there are a whole bunch of them. I've invested in 8 in total. The first one I went in was a dating app, a matrimonial dating app is what they call it, IL. Beautiful model, and I essentially liked the entrepreneur. Was very, very focused and knew exactly how to crack the whole matrimonial model. He was not about I want to do 20 things. He was very passionate about solving this issue, and the problem statement sort of quite honestly resonated with me. Nice. I went through the same issues that IL is trying to solve. So,
super. And I think, it's a saturated space which needs some new.
So I met my wife via Jeevan Sathi, but then, it wasn't arranged by parents. We met each other, we dated, then we fell in love and we decided to get married. So essentially IL is doing that without the traditional, correct, and the parent
pressure
thing inside it. So that IL is a very interesting one of them. There's another one that I've invested in called WYO, Wear Your Opinion, run by Rajveen. All of us know it. So very interesting way that he's building his apparel business. Using largely offline, distribution points.
Correct.
And focusing more on the product and the design of these T-shirts than anything else. So, WI is of course one of them. Then there is Nord. We met via Nord. So
yes,
I think the networking is pretty effective. That way. So Nord is of course there. Uno Coin was an interesting investment. I didn't even talk to the founder before investing in it.
Interesting. So that's one of the hot ones, which is...
And that was done much before, but the thought process was very clear. Bitcoin, it's, whether it will go up or down or explode, there will be people who will be chasing the gold rush. Can I invest in a shovel? And Uno Coin was was a shovel.
Right. Yes.
So Uno Coin investment was really done in late 2016.
Oh,
so it was before even the boom,
the big spike,
the big spike happened. So Uno Coin, I'm looking forward to an interesting one.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one which will.
And there's Makachai, which is out of Bangalore. Again, only focus on teaching mathematics to kids.
Yes,
I read about above. Yeah, and again, very interesting model, the way they've done. Lean team, they don't even have a proper office. Everyone works out of their home.
Okay.
Distributed team, but extremely passionate about the problem. And they've even figured out a very novel way of collecting revenue as well.
Oh, super.
That most techies tend to ignore, how to crack the whole offline model there.
Yeah.
So these are some of the interesting ones. There are a few others.
A lot of diversity. I can
exactly.
see.
It's not like you're...
focusing on a sector.
Yeah, it's not like you're making investments in content or you're
that
making
was
in this,
intentional.
Right? Okay.
That was intentional. So when I started, I took a slightly different approach and I said, I don't know which thesis will work. I don't know which sector will work. Let me just do a diversified set of investments and figure out how the whole angel investment cycle works. How is it that, startups look at investments? How do VCs look at investments? It sort of gives you a very good overview of the whole ecosystem and what's happening, what's not happening. So the first few investments were really to build up a thesis and understand what works, what doesn't work, or what's right for me.
Right.
So that worked really well. And, this year I've taken a position that I'll only invest in consumer startups.
Ah, okay.
So anyone building a physical consumable product using, physical points of distribution or even online points of distribution, but building an interesting physical product brand is where I'm more interested.
Yeah, I think that's sort of a wave which is sort of coming back.
Right.
I see. Right. I mean, there was this entire wave of digital products.
Correct.
And now, I don't know, people are realizing that the physical, so the ability to disperse your brand digitally has become really good.
Absolutely.
But it's the physical product which
are-
ultimately has to stand its ground.
Correct.
So if you have something cool which you can easily market to a lot of people digitally, I think that's what's coming back. Like brands like Bira or Raw Pressery or your Epigamia yogurt.
Epigamia.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. Raw Presley is my primary example when people ask me why this thesis. Well, look
Right.
at these guys.
Yeah.
They've built interesting brands by using, very different points of distribution. And, for them, it's important to focus on product. And it's much like any tech company, you focus on the right product and the right experience.
Exactly.
And the distribution channels are ready. They
Right.
exist.
Yeah.
All you have to do is crack the product and see it grow.
Yeah, you can literally sell on any marketplace today. You can sell on Instagram today for that matter. So, yes, definitely. I think that's the wave which is happening currently. What are your views on angel investing in general, though? You've been doing it for a few years. We've had folks on the show talk about angel investing. I mean, it's such a, like you said, they're all passion-driven investments. Where have you seen or do you have any expectations from what you're doing?
Yes and no, of course. In terms of expectation, everyone expects some return or money coming in.
Right.
But over the course of time, I sort of learned to let it go and realize that, boss, when you invest money as an investor, you're not the big guy. You're actually the first idiot to go in. You only see your returns, or you only see which investor is a loser or a winner after that 4 or 5 year cycle.
Correct.
So that was very clear that one needs to wait for that cycle before anything comes in. So the expectations were not very, very high. But yes, the more important thing was to be able to sort of interact, see how people are doing things, how they're cracking interesting models, what are the various sort of statistics and numbers that are getting built up in those sectors. So angel investment was also a way to get access to those numbers, directly from entrepreneurs and understand each sector closely. Other than that, it's just, I think it's a wait and watch policy. You invest in people that you're passionate about, who you like, or products you like, and then wait for the right thing to happen and support them as much as possible.
Of course.
I think most of the guests on your show and others as well have sort of said that one thing: you don't consider that your play money.
Absolutely, you're not.
You
And
have this
that's
money on the side, you play with it. Don't invest half of your savings into angel investing.
Yeah.
You're not going to make a bomb. It's much like film production as well, to be very honest. And that's the same philosophy I try to.
I was going to
That's
come to
actually,
that.
yeah, that's a good analogy, actually, because it is similar, right? I mean, like extremely high risk, high reward, but at the same time, it is something that takes time to gestate.
Right. So you don't learn. I tell pretty much every first-time producer who comes to us for distributing the film that first-time producers most times always lose. The odds are always stacked against them.
Yeah.
And you only learn how to make a economically right movie after you do it the first 2-3 times, because after which, when talent works with you, you understand the game, you understand the economics. So it's the same thing with angel investment. As to go through, you realize, you know what, I made a mistake in this guy, and this is the mistake I made. I will not repeat this again. Well, a lot of things get spoken about within angel, circuits, and people tell you, but there are a lot of, underlying nuggets that no one will tell you. You just have to figure out on your own.
You have to experience it firsthand. Yeah. But another point which you just made about how you compare what you see in your daily business with your philosophy of investing. Have you ever considered, or have you consciously stayed away from investing in things which are in the domain you operate in, like in the movie business or in the distribution business, or have you thought of that or looked at products in that space?
Oh, quite a bit. I do that pretty much almost every day. That's where my time goes. But I sort of made a decision very early on that I will not invest in films. No matter how much money I make. It's a business that I've seen too closely, and to conduct or to be part of the business, you need to have a certain temperament. That's what I've realized. Right. I can run a very easily a distribution business, but dealing with the film community, you need a very different kind of temperament to be there and conduct it on a business level.
You're so polite.
So,
I need a different temperament.
It is. But I've invested quite a bit in buying rights of title films, after they've released, not in the production stage.
Of course.
We've invested a lot in producing content, whether television or short format.
Oh, really?
We just created a pilot of one of our shows called Ultimate Cinderella, launched it on Women's Day. So that was a complete investment from our side, sort of building that property, which is about, the show is essentially about empowering a woman who's not got a chance in life but has got the talent. So get them talent, get them confidence, make them go through a series of change measures.
Of course. And I think the kids show as well.
And the kids show as well. So kids is another investment in Lattu Kids.
Lattu Kids, yes.
Where I'm also the operating partner now.
Wonderful.
So work very closely on sort of building the whole app out and, working on new shows. There's a show that we've invested in, and we're taking them out to other financiers now to pitch in as well. It's called Trigo. It's again a preschool show.
Wow, wonderful.
So I've done a lot of investments of, as far as content and media business is concerned, but stayed away from films very consciously.
Nice, interesting. In fact, I want to get into a longer discussion about why this sector is exploding the way it is, especially the digital platform,
right?
Which video is seeing today, right? Before we do that, to take a quick short break, come back and talk some more.
Hey friend, so if you're listening to a podcast right now, you're probably some kind of a nerd at heart at least. So maybe, just maybe, you might like another podcast about nerds, by nerds, and for nerds.
It's called Geek Fruit, a community to unite estranged geeks from across India and later on the world. We talk about television, movies, science fiction, adventure, fantasy, etc. Anything nerdy, it's all here on Geek Fruit. You can catch a fresh episode every Monday,
and you can check us out on any of your favorite podcast apps, like my favorite podcast app, the IVM podcast app. Give me my money, IVM.
Good plug.
Happy listening, you nerds.
Hey, welcome back. Jumping in with the conversation with Vivek Lath.
Getting it right?
I'm sorry. I had to do it one more time. I think you're the one who's been really doing the kicking around all over the markets in which you're, spread out now, sending content to over 10,000 hours of content is what you mentioned, of Indian content, distributing it outside.
Right.
So in all of this, and of course in the originally produced shows also which you're working on and so on, right? How have you seen these last few years of video sort of exploding across the board in terms of consumption, domestically, outside, Southeast Asia? I know every often we chat on WhatsApp, you're in Vietnam or some other Southeast Asian country.
Right.
So where have you seen this trajectory, and what direction do you think it's going?
So the direction is, of course, very clear that video is going to explode more and more. The average video viewing time per day, whether it is TV or digital, is only going to increase. Well, it's a good thing and a bad thing, and a good thing for me in a business, but I also look at it that most people spend time only at home and doing outside activities. So that's the only thing I see where video could see a challenge going forward in terms of how does it apportion for consumers' time across the board. But right now it's on a vertical trajectory.
Where did you see this come in from? I mean, you've been in the business for a bunch of years now. Did you notice this? Did you see this coming? How was the lead up to it?
So there were a lot of factors that led to it. A lot of the third world countries or the developing countries saw a sudden boost in general media and entertainment sector. A lot of these countries were, maybe under some sort of a war or political turmoil or issues in 90s, and as they come out, they start as stable economies. And one of the biggest things stable economies is the broadcast business and the advertising business that keeps going up. So, in fact, in the first year, we did bigger business in Africa than we did in Southeast Asia.
Oh.
And that's where we saw this trend significantly going up. Countries like Uganda, countries like Ghana, Nigeria. Nigeria has been stable, but again, a lot of these countries where they've only seen stability in less than, the last 20 years, the last 15 years, now the consumer story is building up.
Right.
So they need content. What we also saw was, a lot of these countries don't have production capabilities. Like we have been doing production for the last 100 years, so we take that as granted.
हाँ,
वीडियो बनाना है तो ऐसे ही बन जाएगा वो. But that talent does not exist in a lot of these countries. So they don't do original production, and they need to buy content from outside and then play them. So we saw the consumption story, of course, going up in a lot of these areas. And we also saw the trend that they don't have production capability. So what will they do? There'll be a vacuum. Mm-hmm. That's when we started sort of traveling to each country one by one, and, of course, filling up that vacuum wherever they needed. If any country broadcasters are buying foreign content, we would go there with whatever we have to sell and try and see if this would fit them that well. So that's where Vietnam, that's where Cambodia, that's where Africa, and a lot of other countries across Eastern Europe came in. So most of the content that we sell goes to non-NRI markets. Right. These are largely consumed by...
Is this digital distribution or is this broadcast distribution?
This is broadcast distribution. So when we started, broadcast was really very big.
Right.
Digital was still growing.
Okay.
At that time. See, digital will become big. That was a no-brainer. It was just a matter of time, when infrastructure is laid out and, people start using that infrastructure. There are a lot of other factors we saw, beyond broadcast, what would drive the digital consumption. Mm-hmm. So an interesting research was done at one of the broadcast companies, I forgot, and that was done almost 4 years back, where they went out into villages in India and they were asking questions about, aapko kaun sa show acha lag raha hai, ye iska show, isme ye story hai, isme ye different story hai, ye kaun sa acha hai. While researching for shows, they got an interesting nugget that most cities or towns outside Bombay or outside the tier 2 towns actually don't have 24/7 electricity. Right? In the night, there is load shedding that happens all the time. So your TV is off, your cable guy is also off electricity. Right. How are you consuming content? And you have a Micromax phone with a 3G connection ready with it, or a smartphone with a 3G connection. So then it dawned on these guys that, for whatever reason, you could say there is no infrastructure, but there is a need because that electricity is not there. What are they going to do in the night? Yeah. And they have a means to watch content using a smartphone. They were looking at Micromax phone at that time because of the battery life. So that sort of showed a lot of interesting trends where this will go. From the day one, I was very bullish that while digital will see adoption faster by the urban youth, mm-hmm. but the real mass or the real adoption of the technology will be brought by the masses, right. The same ones who are watching the Saas Bahu serial. In fact, I went on to tweet about a year back that, what Ramdev is for yoga, Alt Balaji is going to be, or Ekta is for soap, so Alt Balaji is going to be a pretty successful one. And I think we see that now. Yeah. So, and across all OTT platforms, the trends are almost the same. It's really the masses watching the massy content. Right. The daily soaps.
And accessible on these devices which they have.
Absolutely. For me, the more important piece, it doesn't matter who's watching it. The interesting is trickle down significantly to small towns, to people who are uneducated, but they've figured out a way for them to, watch content using a phone, using digital mediums. And it's just a matter of time that behavior trickles to other forms of content or other things you do. So technically, entertainment is educating a lot of these masses to how to use the internet in a way.
Right. Of course, that's the starting point.
It's the first, right? It's the first application of any technology.
Right.
Yeah. People say porn, but actually it's entertainment.
Yeah. I mean, it's leisure, basically.
Yeah,
play
exactly.
a game, watch a video. Basically, all recreational, usage of the phone. Obviously, that's the easiest thing to adopt. But coming back when you were, focusing, obviously you still are on the distribution channels. What made you realize that Indian soap content, like the core focus which you have, right, is going to work in these outside markets? I mean, isn't that also something which it's not just a matter of like translate the voice and it will work, right? What made you think that there's a possibility that all these various markets, like Africa is not the same as Southeast Asia. Like,
correct.
Why will they like Indian stuff?
Right. They love it.
How come they love it? How do you find that out?
So again, a lot of things. There's the thing. We take a lot of things for granted we do in India. And for us, the aspiration is really doing what Hollywood does.
Right.
In a lot of these countries, that's not really the case. They actually aspire to be like us, like Indians.
Really?
In their conversations, it is not, boss, look at this Narcos. Why don't we make content like this? They look at a Balika Vadhu and say, what a story. Why don't we make stories like this? So it's a very relative thing. What is also is the general culture, the family culture. outside of the Western nations is really the same like India. It is hierarchy. It's full of hierarchy. Again, between men and women of the family, between children and the elders of the family. So that hierarchy is still there. That kind of family structure is still there. So a lot of those behaviors or those
cultural significance.
Cultural significance. So while the culture may not be the same, but
the conflicts are universal.
The same. Women have the same problems. They have the same aspirations across the world. So the content that resonates to women here in India essentially resonates to women in many, many other parts of the world. I mean, to me, the first surprise was seeing Balika Vadhu, whichever country it sold. Of course, we didn't sell it. It's been sold by Colors directly, but it's been the #1 show. And in Vietnam, that's become the benchmark. It was #1 by a great number of points across everything else.
Wow.
Right?
I don't understand that.
I mean, that's the thing. We tried very hard to decode it, and that's the explanation we came up with. It's not very different outside India in developing countries. It's the same level of sort of understanding. It's the same problems, and the same stories that people go through in daily life. It's not much different. The setting could be different. This could be a story based in Rajasthan,
right.
But the underlying issue is the same. And that is just one show. There are tons of shows we've sold, and we are surprised the kind of reaction we get. I remember the first show we sold in Jamaica was a Star Plus show called Is Pyar Ko Kya Naam Du? Wow. I don't know if any of you would know that show or ever, but I still have emails coming daily from local Jamaicans. I want to meet Barun. I want to meet Sanaya. This is a great show. Can you send me DVDs? Tons of email. There is a Facebook closed group of some 20,000 odd people only on the show, and they're all from Jamaica.
Wow.
Okay.
So exactly. So you don't realize what kind of content resonates
exactly
with what kind of audience. And I think with this, and tied this in with the fact that digital distribution is becoming so easy. Where you don't, as long as the content licensing part is handled, you can just instantly go live with a show in any country, right? You can literally say it'll appear on this app somewhere.
Right. You still need to localize it, essentially dub it or subtitle it, and put some context to certain things. I remember one show sold by a common friend of ours, in Macedonia. The first episode of the show had this character worshipping the cow. And there was no dialogue. So they had to put some context at the bottom that, Indians and Hindus worship cow and this is part of the culture. So some part of, contextualization is needed to sort of explain why people are doing things, what they're doing in those shows. But otherwise it's
But by and large it works.
It works. And that show was, the #1 show was the first entry into Macedonia. And of course that business boomed really well within that country after that.
Amazing. Imagine, and here we are, like you started with, the fact that we are aping the West. Yeah. It's just a matter of the kind of perspective you
I guess
get.
it is. Everybody's aspirational.
Exactly.
Right. So I take a lot of flack when I tell, a lot of these youngsters and urbaners, when they say, why don't we make content like Hollywood? If we start making content like Hollywood, we will not compete with them in economics. Essentially means we will destroy our own industry completely. Yeah. So that's what happened in a lot of European countries. We will destroy our own industry by...
Yeah, no, but also the Indian grammar of films is very different than what people want in these other places, right? Our songs, our comedy, all of it. It's it's more variety show than it is narrative.
Correct.
And that is kind of what people are looking for over here, right? And so that is, if you try and make fully narrative stuff, then we don't really have the
patience.
Well, I don't know patience, right? Honestly, look at our stories, right? I shouldn't get into this rant. I'm going to do a different episode on IVM Daily about this. But basically, I have it's my considered opinion that Dil To Pagal Hai ruined the Hindi film industry. It really is. I do believe that.
I will tune in to listen to why.
Yeah. But it is mainly because of this kind of contextual kind of ideas, right? That what kind of stuff works and what kind of stuff doesn't work, and how we move down a certain path because certain things worked.
Correct.
So, sorry. That's
tune into that later.
Tune into that.
Find out
we'll
why.
get that on IVM Daily sometime soon.
But so coming back to the fact that it's obviously content is universal now. The access to content is universal now through all of these platforms. And video is just going up domestically across the world. So just like we've had our geo revolution for data, all these other countries, of course, have had that maybe even before us, or it's happening. Do you think about now coming back to your original idea of having a platform, a product, or beyond the stuff which you're doing? Is there
So the idea is still there. In fact, that's one of the transitions I'm working on in this company now. See, essentially when we started as a platform, but we realized there is more money to be made in the trading business. And we still do trading. The question is, it's trading. The sustainability of that is always going to be questioned, whether it will continue to grow or, go through its own ups and downs until the time you don't own either the content, which is basically, I call it manufacturing, or the exhibition, which is owning a platform or a broadcast. You're still in the middle, so you don't last that long. So we're building things internally, not on the platform side, so not creating a platform, but moving on to other forms of media business. So Lattu Kids is one of them where I've moved in. We've just started, launched GoQuest Digital, which is a brand solutions, which is again producing content by getting product integrations from brands rather than just simply pitching them to broadcasters for production. So that's one of the businesses that we've started. And the third one is the format business, which is essentially creating IP, or rather the larger ambition is to try and see if we can create an end mall out of India. So focusing more on reality formats, reality stories, and sort of stick to that niche and build that.
And then try and sell those formats in other countries. So that
try and sell those formats in other countries. It's a beautiful business.
Very interesting.
It's a very creative-driven business.
Very creative-driven business.
Right.
That scares me as well, because I don't have necessarily a creative bent of mind. I'm very, very business and trend focused.
If you're a product person, you're essentially data-driven.
Correct.
Right. So as long as the data is pointing to this, this is what I should be doing. What is the data pointing to in terms of like across these markets which you see? Of course, we know Balika Vadhu is what you should be building. But again, from a maturity of each of these markets is maturing differently. They're having different geopolitical situations and so on, right? So there's so much variety in what you can do potentially in terms of the direction you're going. So have you thought of productizing that in a way?
So it's the same nature of the media business, also a little scary, because there are so many things you look at and you try to see, there are opportunities in so many things, but you need to really pick up one and just go with it and work that out. So from simply trying to sort of productize from a few, then that's where the format business comes into play quite a bit. The whole format business is essentially based on that one reality format that, if it works in one country and it works in 130 countries or, even 10 countries, you continuously produce them season on season. So it's like American Idol is on the 18th season now. So for 18 years straight, the creators are making money.
Wow.
So from a productizing point of view, that is really where we are looking at, within the media industry. This business also has a lot of interesting merchandising extensions. So there's one example I gave very recently was MasterChef. They've opened a restaurant in Dubai, a super premium restaurant in Dubai, which will only serve the winning dishes of MasterChef.
Oh, wow.
So that suddenly creates a large business model, which could be as big as the current value of the IP itself.
It's coming back to what you're saying about building brands, right?
Brands, absolutely.
Build a physical product out of something. It will outlast.
That's one. And there's another experiment that we're doing by creating a food content brand by the name Juice Food.
Oh, nice.
So Juice Food, JOOS. So it's again built from the same philosophy that it's a content brand, but the real business is in extensions and merchandising.
Interesting.
So essentially, let's say you take a position, you build a food brand out of it, and start launching merchandising and other things.
Sounds so interesting.
So essentially, that's what Patanjali is.
Right.
Baba Ramdev for 10 years sold yoga content on Astha channel, right?
Oh.
and made himself popular. And there you go. You see where he is.
One day he says, buy my toothpaste.
Buy my toothpaste.
So it's essentially the same philosophy, the same sort of direction, that you build a strong brand using a niche that you target, very close set of loyal users who will then come and buy your products because they believe in your brand.
Oh, yeah, and there's so many kind of things, right? And if you're looking at the food thing particularly, there's so many spaces, whether it's kitchenware or it's like anything. There's so many things. Oh my God, that's such an interesting idea. It really is. Okay.
Awesome. I think we are going to have a lot more extended conversations about this. So, Vivek, how do people get in touch with you? What's your Twitter handle?
It's my full name, Vivek Lath, Vivek.
Super.
Just feel free to DM or message me.
You are obviously, of course, very popular on Twitter because your tweets get retweeted by famous people.
For all the wrong reasons.
Yes, with all the latest outrages
reasons
which have happened. But I think if you actually start tweeting about all the show-based stuff, I'm sure you'll get a lot of direct outrage. So
I've already had that in personal conversations. I've been questioned that why am I selling regressive stuff?
Oh my
which doesn't
God.
really tell about Indian culture outside.
Oh my
Because
God.
there's money in it. That's the answer, isn't it?
There you go. You gave a Marwadi answer right there.
I think please join the Slack channel or tweet to Vivek. Ask him about
Yeah, if
the
you
shows.
want to join the Slack channel, go to the website ivmpodcast.com/Shunya1. Big button over there says join the Slack channel. And if you press that, send us your email address. Priyanka will send you an invite back.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much for doing this, Vivek.
Thank
This
you
was
guys
awesome.
for inviting. It was fun.
Sorry,
Yes.
one thing before we go. Also, please go and give us 5-star reviews on iTunes and do reviews on the other places as well. That's also kind of helpful, and it really does help. And one other thing, also, please tell a friend about this show. If you enjoyed the show, if you liked it, if you think that is something that a friend of yours would like, then just please let them know and tell them that they should listen to it on the IVM podcast app.
Yes.
Sorry for all the pitching, but I can't need to do it.
Yes, it's content and it's brand building, like Vivek just
Absolutely.
told us.
Absolutely.
This is maybe you'll be syndicating this someday.
We've already had conversations, don't worry. Before you came, a whole bunch of them with Amit.
Amazing. So audio is the new video.
Yes, it is. Audio is
Yes.
the new audio.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, guys. Thank you so much for doing this. See you and talk to you next week.
He bends down to test the warm water for his bath. He comes here to quench his thirst for a hot shower and some podcasts. You can witness how he enjoys having other people talk about cool stuff in his bathroom. Indeed, it helps him with his loneliness. You can find more of his pieces on ivmpodcast.com, your one-stop destination where you can check out the coolest Indian podcasts. Happy listening.